Hello, faithful listeners. My name's Clay Thompson, and I'll be your guide once again in the Fiction Room. Today's prompt is brought to us from a user whose name was taken off of Reddit. "Forget it," the general said, as the alien mothership came in to land. "Summon Cthulhu." As always, I hope you enjoy hearing these stories as much as I enjoy reading them, but without further ado, let's begin with our first story, written by Manifest Thought. It had been a long and drawn-out war. Centuries of warfare against the indomitable strength of the off-worlders had caused rapid technological advances on Earth. Automobiles were traded for frictionless hovercraft, ballistics weapons for energy propulsion systems, and quiet homesteads in the country for staggeringly large domiciles which stretched into the atmosphere, housing hundreds of thousands in only a city block, miles high. Rather than living for things like love, peace, and family, society was fighting for its life against a Herculean opponent from the stars. The people from Earth detected the invading force about 20 years before they arrived, and they fortified everything they could. The forces from Earth had established AI-managed military bases on the other planets in the solar system. They had made defense mechanisms, which could destroy an entire off-worlder transport ship, and then use the wreckage to build more machines to fight against them. The invading force held terrible power. They seemed to have no fear of death, no need to mourn their kin who had been incinerated before their eyes. They just kept coming, kept going. Those who had been captured wouldn't speak, and even when tortured simply begged for death until it was given. And they had strength in numbers. While 100 might be killed, another 1,000 might be birthed in the mothership in only an hour. All they needed was energy. Every time they captured another base, they didn't man it. They just converted it to energy in their mothership. They would use anything. Asteroids, shuttles, people. They converted it all. And from this energy, more of them came. The people from Earth fought like hell against the oppressors, but they were trapped in their solar system. They had no access to energy from other suns, no way of renewing their resources. And so the two forces fought, locked in battle over the course of several hundred years. But as time went on, things became increasingly dismal for Earth. Slowly but surely, Earth gave ground. By the time Mars was taken, the people from Earth were getting desperate, looking for any answer, any ingenious realization which could save them. Many things were tried, and many things failed. They were losing this fight. On the day the mothership landed in the capital, everyone was waiting with bated breath, hoping that the leader could come up with some kind of compromise, hoping for anything other than extinction, anything other than a whole planet being extinguished. The feed of the Capitol building was live, all over the planet. Everyone watched as a force of invaders walked unresisted into the Oval Office. What the world did not see in that live stream, thousands of miles away, was where the president was just now finishing up the geometric symbols he had drawn all over the room, where he was pouring the fresh blood into the shallow maze carved into the floor. Everyone did not see the carnivorous pit look open like the mouth of some sort of subterranean behemoth. The world did not see him gaze longingly at the picture of his family, before setting it at the edge of the pit, before chanting the ancient words and casting himself into the pit. No one heard the dull thump of his body as it was caught in a great, cold hand, the size of a football field. What everyone did see, whether or not they were watching a broadcast, was what happened when the Old One woke. They did see the laws of space and time break. They did see the distortions in reality. They saw as the skyscrapers and cities curved in on themselves, crushed under their own weight. They saw and felt all the space stations and airplanes being pulled inescapably to Earth. They heard the screaming of the lost ones, the ones who had met this terrible force before. They felt themselves thrown into an infinite loop of being torn apart seam by seam and then pieced back together all wrong. For the first time, the Offworlders felt fear. They became fear. They were not wanted here, and they knew it. They felt themselves become molten, melting in endless pain. They felt themselves glistening with immobile fragility, knowing that a single touch would make them shatter. They saw their queen peel like an orange, then watched her insides decay like old fruit in the dark in just a matter of seconds. Everything pulsed. The hills rolled over each other like waves, while the buildings folded into each other, crushing everyone and everything inside. After everything the Old One saw as unnatural was gone and buried beneath the mountains, it was time for growth. Trees sprang up wildly, covering the hills. Grass grew like fire on the plains, and flowers and ivy crept over everything all in an instant, caressing the hillsides. Somewhere, there were survivors. People had made it, and they would survive. They would repopulate as they had before. This was not the first time the Old One had to protect the people from Earth, and it would not be the last. With his job done once more, he sank back to the deep innards of the earth and rested his eyes. He would slumber here until he was needed again. So I'm actually not too familiar with the Lovecraftian stories of Cthulhu, or Cthulhu, however you pronounce it, but I like how this story takes, I guess, the evil nature of Cthulhu and sort of turns it on its head, making him the protector of Earth, even though there's death and destruction everywhere. So I like that, and I'll definitely be checking out more of the Lovecraftian stories when I'm done with this prompt. And now, let's move on to our second story, written by Aaron Abysmal. Sleek silver spacecraft dotted the dimming skyline like crushed peppercorn sprinkled over water. Their shapes were practically indistinguishable by their sheer number and velocity. Command Master Chief Petty Officer Ryan Fields stared upon the decrepit, ancient city of Relaya with a wary eye. The structure of the island was contradictory and unpleasing. There was this strange, electric, and apprehensive atmosphere on the island, and he thought that if he should stay here long enough, he would surely go mad. He had lost half his damn fleet just attempting to make it to this island, on the Master Chief Petty Officer's orders. The orders were clear. This was not humanity's last hope. There was no hope. No, this was vengeance. The warships had arrived unannounced, and by the thousands in some sort of quantum stealth shield that had gone undetected by radars, and blitz attacked Earth's superpowers. In synchronized unison, Washington, D.C., Moscow, Beijing, New Delhi, Paris, and London all fell to the unstoppable extraterrestrial force. They had made no offers to negotiate or requests for surrender, and had made no prior contact. They had simply arrived, intent on destroying humanity. There was no hope. Human forces were not prepared for such a massive assault, and even if they had been, could not match or defend against the technological advantage of the enemy's arsenal. The swift fleet of the alien armada disintegrated opposing military forces, destroyed buildings and ballistics with hypersonic missiles, shut down entire nations' electronics with EMP waves, and flooded the streets of raided cities with weaponized drones. They ate through any and every line of defense like a plague of locusts, and then moved onward to the next helpless populace in their path. Master Chief Fields stared at the strange statue covered in algae with growing anxiety and dismay as foamy waves of green seawater broke against the rocky surface of Relaya. He had no idea how to do what his commanding officer had asked of him in his dying breath. The last contact of the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy with Fields was right after Okinawa was attacked. He had been stationed there overseeing drills in preparation for the North Korea crisis. Fields remembered how MCPON Giordano had screamed over the radio as the percussion of explosions echoed in the background. "Forget it! Just summon Cthulhu! Do you understand? 47 degrees, 9 minutes south, 126 degrees, 43 minutes west!" The MCPON was in the middle of repeating the coordinates when the transmission cut out. Okinawa had fallen to the alien horde. Ryan Fields felt himself being pulled toward the statue, and felt a deep longing to touch the replica of the eternal creature and feel its damp, cool surface. He didn't so much as want to. On a personal level, he found he needed to. He approached the strange, humanoid creature that resembled both an octopus and a dragon, and felt a humming vibration inside his head. He placed his hands on either side of the thing's tendrilled face as his petty officers watched in awe. "Hungle mungulonach Cthulhu rileach waganegal fuktaran," Fields whispered as his body tensed and pulsated. Suddenly, Fields felt a wave of knowledge erupt throughout his skull. An impossible current of ancient and powerful secrets obliterated his mind and lapsed synapses as they passed through. He had gone insane moments before he stopped breathing, but it might well have been an eternity of damnation with the vision of what ancient evil he had just summoned burned into his mind. Beyond the island, enormous tidal waves began to thrust and swell in an outward motion, devouring the remnants of the Fifth Fleet that had come to Relaya. The surface of the ocean became permeated with dead marine and deep-sea creatures as their inferior brains collapsed at the sight of the great Old One. Slowly, Cthulhu awoke from eons of its death-like slumber and rose from the deepest and darkest depths of the ocean, bringing dread and terror to Earth's surface with it. Its sleek, bulbous green skull rose first, followed by enormous, piercing, cosmic red orbs, then innumerable tentacles larger than the ships that had sunk after its ascension. Some of the seagoing men screamed as they witnessed the great Old One. Many simply dropped dead from the implosion of their reality, just as Fields had done. Others threw themselves into the sea. Above, the alien warships began to plunge from the sky like dead flies as their pilots went insane. Spacecraft crashed all around the Great Dreamer, and the mind of every living thing that witnessed Cthulhu collapsed into madness under the sheer power of its existence. And Cthulhu laughed. Okay, yeah, so I'm definitely checking out the Lovecraftian stories after this because, wow. This is just a fan-made story, and if the originals are anything like this and better, then I've been missing out. Amazing story, by the way. Very well done. And now, dear listeners, we must unfortunately bid you farewell once again. Thank you all so much for tuning into the Fiction Room. If you enjoyed today's stories, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. It would very much help us. And wherever you are in the world right now, be safe, be well, and we'll see all of you next time.